Are we on the air?
We're on the air, babe. What's new with you?
Oh, just chop wood, carry water.
Chop husband, bury body.
It's a daily task. We had our first scorpion sting.
We did, yes. Zoe was just kind of lounging around in her bedroom and
She was playing, and she said she felt something crawl on her leg, and so she stood up, and then I just heard screaming. Help! Oh, she was like screaming.
And
I'm
of course,
like, oh
I was out of the house.
What's going on? And I run down there, and she's on one leg, leaning against the wall with her other leg in the air, and I see that little thing crawling along the carpet. So that was eventful.
We dispatched that guy. The vegans can...
He got dispatched, and then...
go chase.
Apparently, baking soda and water paste helps.
Thank you, Kate Wellborn.
Thanks to Kate Wellborn. She gave me that pro tip, and Zoe said she felt like she got zapped. So apparently, I mean, I've never been stung, but apparently, and we've heard this from other people, that it feels
Kirk
more
Parsley
like a...
got zinged by one also, and he said it felt like an electrical
More
shock.
like an electrical shock than...
Yeah.
Like
Luckily, the scorpions in Texas are not like the scorpions in most of Arizona and New Mexico, which are apparently fatal and require like a $50,000.
We wouldn't have moved here if, if that was the type of scorpion. But yeah, so that was an
But Zoe
detail.
had been bragging pretty vigorously.
Well, she's the only one that hasn't been bit by a fire ant yet. And so she's like, I've never been bit by an ant. I've never been bit by an ant. And all the rest of us have. And then she got hit by a scorpion.
Well, and this is all in pretty stark contrast to Reno, which is so dry that there's just nothing alive there.
Right.
So there were no bugs. So.
Right.
Okay, so
you ready to...
As interesting as all that is, I doubt that folks showed up for much of
They
that.
might be
Although
curious.
maybe a little bit of that. They might be.
Yeah.
But we still like the area.
Yeah,
so,
we do.
So far, so good.
So far.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. This week, our first question we have is from Shelly on carb ups and cycling for women. She says, hi, I'm new to your page, and it seems like you would be a very knowledgeable and kind person to ask.
Clearly, she hasn't followed us very long.
I'm sure you get a ton of questions, so I'll make it short. I've been successful with keto in the past, but now that I'm back on it, I cannot lose weight. I've been told my body is used to it and to give it time. My question is about carbing up, as I've heard it's necessary for women because of hormones. Carbing up is more complicated for me, but if I needed it to be healthy, I could do it. What are your thoughts on women needing higher carbs at times?
Man, this is an interesting one to unpack because we cruise over to our good friends Tyler and Luis at Keto Gains, and they have tens of thousands of women following their protocols, and they're not like exploding into fits of adrenal burnout and thyroid downregulation and whatnot. And I think a big part of that is that people are really on point with electrolytes within their stewardship. That said, and there's going to be kind of a little bit of a common theme here with leaning out, we do need a caloric deficit. So by hook or by crook, we kind of have to figure that out. So one of the things that is multiple things interesting within that Keto Gains community, mainly women, like 85% women, like 30 to 55, something like that. So you would think that they would be right in that strike zone where they would be the most prone to having problems, but they're on point with protein, they're on point with electrolytes, and people are continually stunned by how few calories they need to eat to be at their like caloric deficit or even a maintenance. We've talked about this on other shows previously, and not everybody is like this, but Luis is several inches shorter than I am, about 10 pounds heavier than I am, and he runs like 1,600, 1,800 calories a day, which just doesn't make sense on the one hand. But I've actually made the case, and I've talked to Tyler and Luis and some other people, that because of some thermodynamic efficiencies with keto and low carb in general, you may not need as many calories as what the standard recommendations make. And this is all kind of out there crazy talk stuff. There is no randomized control trial supporting this, but it's just kind of an observation that people who eat a generally whole unprocessed diet, particularly on the lower carb side, generally seem to need fewer calories. Now, there are people, we know a guy, Ken, who is similar dimensions to Luis, and he needs to eat like 4,500 calories a day for maintenance. So there are outliers out there. Like, again, like it seems like Luis is eating far too many calories, and then it seems like Ken is eating far too many calories. All of that said, so, I don't know that leaning out specifically is going to be made or broken by the addition of carbs.
The thing that sticks out to me is, we don't know what her macros are. I mean, Shelly, she says she's new to your page, so she could be following a keto protocol from somebody else on the interwebs that's very fat centric and very low protein, because we've seen this a lot in people that have come over to the keto masterclass, and they're astonished at the amount of protein that you recommend.
Right.
So one of the first things that sticks out to me is that she needs to make sure that she's focusing on protein and using that fat as a lever, not fat as a means of getting into ketosis.
Right. Great. Fantastic point. And then, even though I've been singing the praises of the Keto Gains folks, they do oftentimes move women and athletes in general to higher carb levels at some point. And this is just stuff that they play with. Usually it's for folks that are doing more glycolytically demanding sports, and they just generally feel good at that higher carbohydrate intake level. So I'm not saying that you absolutely should not increase carbohydrate, but simply increasing carbohydrate may not be the way that you fix what's ailing. We definitely need, if the goal is to lean out, we need a caloric deficit. Probably, to Nikki's point, probably the best way to facilitate that is making sure that you're on point with protein, and then really getting in and using something like the Keto Masterclass or the Keto Gains macronutrient calculator to get a good, idea of what the appropriate caloric level is, to say nothing of the overall macronutrients. Anything else? Can I beat that one to death further, or is that pretty good?
I think that's good. Let's see. Our next question is from Jack. He is wondering what the right diet is for his body composition. Jack says, I just watched your video on body composition from fasting. You touched on the component of heavy workload in modern athletic people and how their diet should reflect that. I'm athletic and fit. I train 5 to 6 days out of the week, lifting weights, boxing, BJJ, wrestling, and I'm currently training for a half marathon. I do all this and I still can't get my body comp where I'd like it. I eat relatively low carb and have upped them recently for the half marathon training. Before the summer, I did 20% deficit and intermittent fasting for 5 or so months and got myself into the 10 to 11% body fat range. Then I went off on vacation and have been eating around maintenance since. Point is, I still can't get my body composition how I want it. I have abs, but fat around my midsection and on the sides. What am I doing wrong? I'm a male, 6 feet and 185 pounds.
What do you think is going on here, wife?
I think this guy is overtraining.
Might be some overtraining, and
it's sort of that, like, Glassman used to mention that sort of fat aerobics instructor.
Right.
Training 5 to 6 days a week, BJJ, wrestling, lifting, boxing, half marathon. So there's clearly a lot of
significant amount of
training and work output.
Here, yeah. And there's kind of a reality that if you want to be really, really lean, you may not be at a body composite. Now, some people score the genetic lottery where they're super lean and they have great performance. But a lot of people, they find that their body composition, their best performance is at a body composition that is in, for men, like around that 8 to 11% range, and women, 3, 4, 5 points higher than that. So this is where, if you want to look like a fitness model, then you need lower work volume. And this, again, may also, so 2 potential things here. Guy may be overtraining, over-exercising, which is causing a stress response. And then also this circles back to that point of, generally, if you want to lean out, you've got to have some amount of a caloric deficit. And so if we're not affecting that, then we need to figure out some way to get that appropriate caloric deficit, which, like in the previous question, really, be protein centric, and then figure out, are you fat or carb fueled, or a little bit of a mixture of both? And
how's your sleep? Sleep can really affect body composition.
Yeah. Clearly. So,
and if you're training in the evening, that can affect how you sleep and how you recover.
Which is why it's taken me 20 years to get to nearly a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Because we don't train at night.
Because I don't train at night, or very, very rarely. So those are all factors. And again, this is where you kind of have to pick your poison, or the primary goal, if the basic training is the thing that's driving you forward, but that training may be antagonistic towards the body composition, then the body composition is a secondary goal. If you just want to be lean, then we may need to modify the timing, the volume, the intensity of the training to have a sufficiently low enough stress response going into your body to afford the body saying, okay, I'll run at a lower body fat level, or at least do it in a way that's reasonably easy. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question from Levi on losing your vision when eating junk food. Recently, a story has been circulating about a teen losing his vision from a junk food diet. Namely, he was eating a predominantly carbohydrate diet full of chips, fries, bread, and cold cuts. Since hearing this, I have been curious. Is this actually possible to lose your vision or suffer other ailments from a junk food-laden diet? What happens if someone goes on an almost, I'm assuming he means almost all carb diet, because it just says an almost carb diet. I would love your input.
Yeah, I mean, so, gosh, a lot of different things that I'm thinking about here, but if we just look at the situation that people face in developing countries, particularly if there's like a natural disaster and people don't have access to their more traditional foods and they just get a bunch of like corn or rice distributed to them, these people can end up in nutrient deficiencies, and blindness due to a lack of adequate vitamin A is still a global problem, like a significant global problem. There were some genetic engineering attempts around creating, I think it's called a golden rice, which is a type of rice that has a little bit of an orange hue to it, which contains beta carotene. And that the Weston A. Price folks will freak out. They're like, beta carotene doesn't convert perfectly. And no, it doesn't. But it also is enough to prevent blindness in these people. So this is where like good enough, maybe it, in fact good enough. But yeah, if you sufficiently strip the nutrients out of a diet, this is kind of the inevitable result that we see. And there's some really interesting stuff around this. Within, say, like the carnivore diet, in theory, people should be developing scurvy and a bunch of other nutrient deficiencies. But if we reduce carbohydrate intake, we reduce the need, it would appear, for vitamin C. And vitamin C tends to compete with the receptor site seems to be kind of competed with glucose. And so high glucose levels are going to necessitate an inherently higher level of vitamin C. And you find some just fascinating historical accounts where mid-Victorian navies were either doing really well from a health standpoint with their sailors, or crippled because they had too little protein in it. And too little, usually they when they put this stuff together, they linked it back to protein, because protein tends to be the most nutrient dense, kind of food products that we can eat. But this was a really common feature of, these early mid-Victorian navies, and Japan being one of the primary examples. And they actually did research with some European navies and looked at the dietary composition of those folks who were not suffering the nutrient deficiencies that were found in the Japanese Navy. So we wrote that up in, I think, the Carnivore 101 thing that we have. We have that somewhere where we could put some links in the show notes. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The 20th century was really a story of trying to prevent nutrient deficiencies. So things like goiter from low iodine, and berberine, and all kind, B vitamin deficiencies. We largely kind of fixed that. Some of the solutions were good. Some of them were kind of knuckleheaded. But we've gotten to a point where enough people eat sufficiently nutrient-denuded food, because I don't know how, I guess you could sprinkle B vitamins on like potato chips or something, but that's probably going to negatively impact the flavor. And so the brands that don't add it are going to
sell more,
sell more and all that type of stuff. But yeah, you can definitely get yourself into a spot from eating a super processed diet where a whole host of nutrient deficiencies pop up. And I mean, a kid in the developed world going blind, that was just unheard of. Like, you had to really be in some austere environments for that type of nutrient deficiency to historically occur. And now this is becoming somewhat commonplace. And I like the WebMD line. It's teen's fussy diet leaves him blind. And
fussy junk food diet.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it's making me think of the comment stream on one of Diana Rogers at Sustainable Dish on Instagram. One of her recent posts where somebody was eating her a whole lot of people were chewing her out for suggesting that Pop-Tarts she makes the case that, you know, removing meat from the diet, especially from schools and all these places, it's one place where a lot of people who don't have a lot of access to high nutrient quality foods, that's the one place they get it. And if they're not getting it in school, then they're
getting it nowhere.
They're getting it nowhere. Yeah. And
God, people ate her live. You're just speaking from privilege. You're elitist.
And she's like, no, I'm making the point that these people, you know, everybody needs access to this. And if we take it away from the one place where a lot of these children, it's the only meat that they get in their day, you know.
And this is where this whole like kind of climate change plus meat policy is really kind of going to crazy land in a lot of ways, because Diana has made the case, and we make the case in the book that's due out next year, Sacred Cow. The people that are going to be most negatively affected by this are the poor and poor and minorities, just disproportionately, because these are folks that in many circumstances, these kids, the only meal they get, the only one, is the school lunch program. And now there's this huge movement to remove all animal products out of the school lunch. And part of my cynical side is just kind of like, fuck it. Bring that on. Let it go. Because it is going to so catastrophically affect the health of a generation of kids that this vegan question is going to be put the fuck to bed. But there's going to be millions of kids damaged in this process. But part of me is kind of like, gonna make an omelet, gotta break some eggs. These motherfuckers want to push this agenda. Cool. Okay, let's just let them go. And then this is gonna be stuff that Walter Willett and all these other assholes will not be able to hide this stuff, because there will be so many people so sick and so negatively affected. And as it is, our meat consumption has been decreasing over time, yet all of our health problems get worse, you know? And so on the one hand, I kind of feel like it's our obligation to go in and try to fight against this stuff. But then on the other hand, we could be 10 years away from like the vegan plague being done, because we have kids grow fast. And so you see nutrient deficiencies super quick in kids. And this is going to be something that cannot be hidden within the janky nutritional research scene. And I'm sure that they'll spin it in some sort of asinine way, but my cynical side is kind of like, fuck it, let them do it, and let's see what happens.
But it's tragic. I mean,
it's tragic.
It's already happened. I mean, what happened to this kid is tragic.
Just on the B vitamin side, like B12 deficiency, these kids will not develop neurologically the way that they should. They will be dumber. They will be less able to do any one of a number of things. And they will be hamstrung the rest of their lives because of
what is the cost to society?
And what is the cost to society around that? Yeah. And this is part of the reason why we're kind of hair on fire about this stuff, because it really fucking matters. And it's a complex topic. And it's really difficult to unpack. And the vegans have kind of an asymmetric warfare where they just stand on the other side of the fence and throw a grenade over. And it's basically like, meat causes cancer. And they go running. And then we're left to pick up the aftermath. And then
any killing is inhumane.
And, the big push right now is to just moderate meat consumption. Whenever I hear someone say, well, we just need moderate, what was the Chris Weaver's deal?
Everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation, yeah. That is just like the most bullshit position to throw out there. What does moderation even mean? Like, there's no quantifier to that. There's no benchmark for where you're assessing things. And in an environment where we have an example like this,
we'll just have a little chips and a little fries and a little bread and a little Pop-Tart and just a half of a Pop-Tart.
Yeah. And he moderated himself into blindness, which I don't know if it's reversible or it's permanent. But these kids that end up B vitamin deficient through their formative process, there is no bringing them back. They're going to be broken the rest of their lives. So Yeah, man, and it's a not popular position. We get in trouble with the Googles and the Facebooks because these things are seen to be not scientific, promoting anything like an ancestral type diet. It's God, all kinds of other nomenclature gets applied to like the sustainability features of this story, but I've never been good at shutting my mouth and keeping my head down in the past, so it's unlikely I will do that in this case. But for the folks listening, like, this is the fight that we have, and it's unfortunate, but I think at the end of the day, we're not really in a position of kind of winning hearts and minds on the other side of this thing. Like, we need to get the people that are into this stuff to organize and rally, because the vegans are really good at doing that, and we so far have not been. And if you if you have an autoimmune condition and you want access to the food that you need to eat to deal with your autoimmune condition, you need to think about what the overall kind of social political platforms are that you're kind of supporting. So, man, that was a long fucking digression into that, but yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking about that more as we get closer to the release of Sacred Cow.
Yes. Yes, which we've already had death threats around that, so that's a good time.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to keto and histamine intolerance. Christy says, "Hi, Robb and Nicki. I hope you can help me. I'm eating a dairy-free, nut-free, ketogenic diet for leaky gut and inflammation purposes. I track macros using the Ketogains method, and I'm experiencing what I believe to be a pretty intense histamine intolerance, and have been for the past year and a half. I can't figure out what to eat. Keto foods seem to be predominantly high in histamine. I love keto. I feel incredible when I eat this way, and I'm already taking DAO and quercetin. Quercetin?
Quercetin, yep.
I don't drink alcohol at the moment, nor do I consume fermented foods. Can you please shed some light on how someone with a histamine intolerance can navigate their way through keto? I'm at a loss and feeling pretty discouraged. Thank you to both of you for all the important work you do and your continuous accessibility."
Okay, Nicki, channel what is Rob thinking?
I have no idea.
Man, these things are really tough, and this is some of the stuff that I hope I look back 10 years from now and I'm like, fuck, I really had that stuff wrong. But one could make the case that people end up in these histamine intolerant states because of a narrowing of food choices. And so it narrows the gut microbiota. But then people oftentimes narrow their food choices because they feel like dog shit, and then they feel better, at least for some period of time, with a narrowing of the food choices. But even within this kind of keto land, there are foods that are not really in that like pro-histamine list, like the fermented foods and stuff like that. What's one thing that would deal with the histamine problem almost immediately? Going carnivore. What does going carnivore potentially do? Further limit your gut microbiota. Now, we don't know, is that overall good? Is that overall bad? Is it overall good for me and overall bad for you? Like, that's a bunch of the shit that we don't know and needs to be unpacked. And I wish I had a better answer to this. You know, it's
so what are the primary foods that are
definitely fermented foods, things like sardines. I mean, the list is kind of like tear producing when you consider eating kind of like a paleo ketogenic type diet. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the major stuff. So I mean, the options are kind of to try to stay within the foods that are not problematic. There are options also of doing some things like the GI map test, and to see if you maybe have a pathogenic overgrowth of certain bacteria that maybe has displaced some of these histamine. So you have histamine producing bacteria. If you can displace those or reduce their number, then you tend to produce less histamine. There are other bacteria that can actually metabolize histamine. So there's some different strategies around that. Some people find that doing maybe there's some small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that feeds into this. This is just where like you've got to grab somebody that's kind of a good gut person. Chris Kresser, Mike Ruscio, Lily Nichols, who's Agalee Jacobs. Like all these people are really, really good with this stuff. and you need to get in and do some testing and try to get a sense of where your gut microbiome is. And then we can do some tweaking and fiddling, like maybe we add a little bit of resistant starch to the mix, and also do something like there's a couple of different probiotic strains like the BSL-3 that's used for Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, I believe. And then this product called Seed, which is probably one of the best research-backed probiotic supplements out there. But you need somebody to help you navigate that stuff. Like you need to kind of figure out what's your baseline, and then develop a plan, test the plan, and then assess and go forward.
Iterate.
So Chrissy, I wish I had a more concrete plan for you. The things that I could say right now that would probably help address things: just limit those histamine producing foods, which the ultimate expression of that is probably something that looks like carnivore, and or find a functional medicine person who is well-versed in ferreting out gut issues and start figuring out how to rebuild the gut microbiota so that the histamine production is less of a problem. And that is way easier said than done. Like it is for folks going through it. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Okay. Let's see. Our last question for today is from Bill on a home gym setup. Hi, Rob. I'm finally ready to take the plunge and invest in some equipment for a home gym. I cleared some clutter in the garage, so I've got a bit of space, not a ton, but enough, I think, for a few choice items. My question is, what are your must-haves for home gym equipment that ideally don't take a ton of space?
Why don't you? What's your faves?
Definitely dumbbells, definitely a pull-up bar, definitely a barbell, and a rack. But you can get, we have just movable rack. It's not fixed to the wall. It's not like a big rack structure, although that would be nice if you had the space. But
one of the things to kind of play around with this stuff. So we have a pull-up bar up on the wall, which is cool. But you could make cases that like a power rack with a pull-up bar, it's all kind of self-contained. But the cool thing about just having some independent squat stands, kind of Olympic lifting style deal, is our whole gym is totally mobile and portable, other than the pull-up bar that's stuck to the wall.
Squat outside in the driveway if we wanted to do that.
And it's super easy to do it. So I do, like Dave Warner really got that whole portability idea in my head. And so we've tended to opt for trying to use as little fixed objects as you can. And I mean, the pull-up bar is kind of one of those things where it's like, you want that pretty well fixed. You don't want it coming down on your dome, bumper plates, kettlebells, dumbbells. I'm still kind of pining for like a really nice selectorized dumbbell set that goes like 5 pounds to 100 pounds or something like that. I think something like that would be cool because it's just super small footprint and comparatively inexpensive. I know they're a little ungainly compared to actually having the dumbbells, but because of the relatively small space, like that, just the selectorized thing takes up hardly any footprint, and again is super portable. Jump rope. Yep. And then kind of like
you could either do a rower or you love the assault bike.
I've played around with the Concept 2 rower. I've done some other machines, and honestly, the thing that I've enjoyed the most is the assault bike. Like for me, the rower, I already sit a lot. And even though you're sitting on the assault bike, you're sitting up and it's in a very different posture. And the loading is totally different on my low back than what it is on any of the rowing machines. And the assault bike is awesome for steady state cardio. It's insane for intervals. It's great as part of a circuit. The assault bike is cool because of the adjustability of the seat. I know there are some other...
we had the bike we had before.
It was like a Schwinn Airdyne, and it was so non-adjustable.
I hated it because I felt like I was never in the right position and it was uncomfortable. So it was...
So, and you use this one a little bit. You're still not like a huge fan of doing that stuff, but like you'll use it as part of a circuit, whereas the other one was not. So if there was one piece of kind of like cardio gear that I would recommend, the assault bike is super versatile. It's relatively inexpensive. And again, it's portable. Like when it's sunny,
take it outside.
I drag it outside and sit in the sun. If the weather sucks, I roll it inside and then I can use it as part of a circuit. I discovered on Netflix that even though the assault bike is a little bit on the loud side comparatively, but I just put my Netflix, I don't have a real good setup out there for watching shows, but I just put on the closed captioning and then I'm able to just watch it, and it's awesome. So,
I have a question. Do you get like bike sick if you're reading while pedaling, the way that people get car sick when they read in the car?
No, because my center of mass is not actually changing.
Okay.
So my vestibular equilibrium is not challenged during that process. Yeah. Good question, though. I appreciate that. But I cannot walk on a treadmill and type. Chris Kresser rolled his whole book. He walked like 200 miles or something writing his book. And like I get seasick and like fall off the thing. So anyway, so
let's see, anything else? Definitely jump rope.
And if you guys want to check out weighted vest, but really quickly, if you guys want to check out the assault bike, it's at assault air bike on the Instagram, #assault bike. Give them a check out. But yeah, the weighted vest is also another really good option. Like I use that a lot, whether I'm doing ring rows, push-ups, pull-ups, and then also just getting
stomping
out
around, walking the dog. Yeah. A wheelbarrow, if you have one already, you don't need to buy it if it's not something that you use around your house. But we'll put dumbbells or bumper plates in a wheelbarrow and wheel that around the cul-de-sac in the driveway.
Yeah. Anything else? Like we have bumps, squat stands, assault bike, pull-up, rings. We have a bunch of different rings. We ended up hanging rings in the front yard for the girls, and the rings are dog chew toys, like little plastic dog chew toys, and we put them into the fourth CrossFit affiliate gym ever, and that was in 2004, and the things have not been chewed on, so they're remarkably robust and still exist.
Or like Nylabone or whatever was the
but those things are like $4.
$4.
So like if you wanted to go El Cheapo on, and this wouldn't be great for muscle ups or anything, but for body rows and even some supports, $5 for some come along straps, and then $4 or $5 for the Nylabone dog chew toys, and then just somewhere to hang it, and you're in business. Like you can do a lot of good stuff with that.
Cool.
I'll go mass. So we have
a
big announcement coming out soon.
We do on November 1st. We'll be announcing that on Instagram and also via email. So if you're not yet following us at Das Robb Wolf, DASROBBWOLF, or subscribe to our newsletter, then you'll want to make sure that you are, so that you get the big news on November 1st.
Cool. Thank you, wife. Yeah. Thank you, listeners.
And always, continue to submit your questions at robbwolf.com.
Cool. Talk to y'all soon.
Right.
Take care.
Bye.